Look who's here. Come here. Hello, good boy. Hello. You want to come on camera? No? Okay. Good boy. Hey everyone. So today's video is going to be a little chat together. Excuse the hat. My hair's a bit of a mess and I'm a little bit self-conscious about it. But I need to get my hair cut. My barber's like closed down, so I'm in the process of trying to find another barber, but that's just, you know, everyday life stuff, right? Which I suppose it's all the same thing. We're human beings, right? I suppose there's no real, like, at least for me, work-life balance kind of doesn't exist. My work, my life, it's all pretty much the same thing these days. This isn't a chilling with David. This is more of a personal evaluation. So the channel's been going for more or less 2 months now. In the first month, I did about 20 videos, and in the second month, I did approximately, you know, one every week. So like, I think I'm on video 4 now. This will be video 5, I think, if my numbers are correct. But very, very little in comparison, with the idea being of putting out more quality content. But that's actually happening in the background. I am sort of gathering footage for different ideas. I've got about 4 different ideas for videos for, you know, how can I say, YouTube content videos. The first being my setup is now complete. So I want to do a YouTube video, you know, it'll probably be a little bit of a clickbaity title, but I have to play the game a little bit. Something like photography to game dev, 3 years and $10,000 later, or something like that. My, you know, gaming setup or whatever, like I'll figure something out, and then show off exactly what I've got. And then I might split that down in the future after that. So there will be one video which is like my overall cohesive setup, my workflow, what I've decided on, what I've gone with basically. And I need to start looking more in the lens, don't I, rather than in the viewfinder. And then I'll break it down from there. So from that video, then we will break it down to my rig and my rig build, and then maybe show like all the boxes, because I find that once you show the boxes, it's easier to visualize. What's wrong? What's wrong? Hey? He wants attention. But anyway, as I was saying, we can then break it down, so I can do my rig, what it does well, what it does less well, where I would change things if I was building today, what I would like to upgrade in the future, that sort of thing. And then obviously peripherals are a big one. I actually want to spend the next sort of 3 months now with the peripherals I have, because I feel like I've just been spending out on new mice and stuff, especially mice recently, and haven't had time to really get used to the ones that I've got, which, you know, like the Viper's only just come out, so there's no way anyone can really be used to that mouse and used to FrameSync technology, stuff like that. No one's using 50K, let's be honest. Like I use 3200 DPI, which is insignificant when you think, like, so 3200 DPI on a 4K screen. That's what I use, and I find that's a nice middle ground. And I'm using this, obviously it's got built-in FrameSync and stuff, and I'm trying some other stuff out with it, because like if there's stuff going on in the mouse already, I may as well try like acceleration stuff. Whereas then I've got sort of the super light, which is 0 going on in the mouse. That's why this is pretty much a beloved peripheral, because there's just nothing going on in the mouse. It just literally reads what you put in. So this is like a manual transmission, and this is like a paddle box. That's the way I would sort of describe them. And then obviously I've got the Ergo, which I was using as my everyday mouse, and this is like my everyday. And I've customized this with the X-ray pad feet, and I'll probably put the X-ray pad feet on all of them, so that there's like a control, you know, a scientific control, so that they're all, I have to cover my face, otherwise the camera just focuses on me. So there's a scientific control, so it's always going to be on the Pulsar Power Speed pad, which I'm using here, which I like. It's a Cordura pad. And I like it because, first of all, it's very close to, you know, sort of a fast glass surface as it can get, but it still holds texture, still holds a little bit texture, but also being Cordura, it sort of functions as a desk pad because I spend the majority of my time in the day at my desk. It needs to weigh. But they have a V2 of this now, so I'm thinking about getting the version 2 to see what the version 2 is like. But yeah, so I've really got, you know, and I've managed to find a Super Strike in stock. There's only 4 of them in advice, and I bought one. No need to buy more than one. So I'll have the best. So the idea is I'll have the best of 2016, the Viper versus the Super Strike, and then I've got the Super Strike versus the Super Light. So it's got the Super Strike hit system versus, you know, your standard mouse to see. And I think that that's like a good pool to sort of start benching from. In terms of mouse and in terms of my game, you know, I think that, you know, if it's showing input lag or if it's feeling laggy or floaty with these peripherals, then it's the game, right? That's what I want to eliminate. You know, like you can't say like if you, or even other games when I'm feeling like, oh, I like the feel of this, let's try and, you know, implement this into our game. How can we sort of like deconstruct it and then reuse this? Like if it's coming from the peripheral and not the game itself, then it's sort of pointless, really, isn't it? So I have to eliminate the peripheral being the bottleneck to why games feel the way they feel. And it's another reason why I am contemplating the Razer Wolverine. I've got the 8-bit dough, and to me this feels very sufficient for those needs. Like when I first jumped to it, I didn't really feel much of a difference. But then now when I go back to the Xbox pad, it's night and day. I can't do it. So, but for me, I've been experimenting, and I find that sort of like 1K is the sweet spot. For me, past 1K, I don't really see any difference in polling. But I guess internal scan has a lot to do with that as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm thinking of picking up a Mons Geek. So Mons Geek is like a subdivision of Acco, and Acco is a pretty well-known keyboard brand in the enthusiast circle, but they do like a Wooting clone, and I don't really like clones. I'm not a fan of the clones, but it's got everything. It's a Wooting 60HE with everything you wish Wooting would put in it. So it's got TMR switches instead of Hall effect. It's 8K wireless over 2.4 instead of wired. And it's also got like a ridiculous scan rate. I think Wooting does an internal scan rate of 8K, whereas the Acco does an internal scan rate of like 128K. So there's like very, very, very little chance that it's going to report anything other than your actual input. I don't have any specific specialized testing equipment. It's all sort of like, you know, what they call it in motorsports is ass test, you know, it's how does it feel inside the car. One thing to have the telemetry and all of that, but it's another thing when you're actually in the seat and how does that affect you. And I think that's sort of the best way for me to go around this. But I think that, you know, I've sort of lost myself a little bit, and I'm trying to find myself, and it's only been 2 months, and it's good that I can check myself this short of amount of a way in, because like what I felt initially after the first month was I felt that I took way too much on. I felt that I couldn't do like a quarter of what I set out to do, which is perfect. I don't think that's essentially a negative thing. Being able to know your boundaries is a good thing, because then you can actually knuckle down and go, okay, so if I can't do everything, then what do I do? And I kind of retreated over April, because April is like a weird month in Thailand. There's a lot of time where nothing sort of happens. It's extremely hot out as well, like extremely like dangerously hot. As far as I've been able to tell, there's been no reported fatalities this year. Last year there was. Last year quite a few people died from the heat. Luckily there's not been any of that this year. But I think that a lot of that also has to do with the fact that the pollution is the worst it's ever been, and petrol prices are the worst they've ever been, and that sort of puts people in a position where they're just doing less, so they're going out less, right? They don't have as much money, and they don't want to get stuck in the horrible air. So, you know, there's bad things that come with that, but I think that that's one of the reasons, if I had to sort of dig into it. But anyway, that's by the by. I've had a really weird month. My car's broken. It's in the shop at the moment. So this is what this video is about. Next week, I've got sort of 4 days. I've got to take my dog to the vet, get him checked out. I have to take him again next month as well, because as most people know, like Siberian Huskies, they're not perfect. So you have to make sure that they're well looked after, because like purebred dogs, that's just what you get. And woolly Siberians are also the same. And honestly, if I knew this before getting him, maybe it would have changed my decision to go with a purebred. But I'm just giving him the best life he can possibly have right now, and it's difficult because like in Thailand, there's not a lot of places for him to go. Surprisingly, there's a lot of soy dogs, and they have various issues: ticks, lice, parasites, stuff like that. So I'm very aware of not having him go out, and also his back legs are not great. We're sort of seeing how it goes at the moment. We don't want to operate unless we have to operate, because there's just as many side effects with operating, not just now, but when he gets older as well. So we're sort of playing all that by ear, and also the heat. So he tends to just stay inside and plays with his toys. We try and sort of like substitute his running with other stimulation, so he does get his exercise and he fights with his toys. And we've got a big house, so it's not like he's caged up in a small space, but it has become his house now. Like it's just his hair everywhere and stuff. But anyway, so I've got a few days next week where I have to sort my dog out. And if people know Thailand, those are just days that I can't plan. They're just days that, okay, we're going to go see the vet and it's going to take as long as it's going to take. That's just how Thailand is. And the same for the car. I have to go and pick the car up, and I have to take it to another place, because the problem I'm having is the windshield. It's all covered under warranty anyway, but I have to go to the windshield shop, the tint shop, and then how it's like. It's like I have to make my way there, drop it off, somehow make my way back, and then juggle it. So if I just say there's 4 to 5 days next week, which I can't plan whatsoever, and today I'm also going to get some dental surgery done, so there may be 3 days where I'm not able to speak. So I've got a good week to 10 days where I sort of can't really put anything out on the YouTube channel that's really worthwhile. So after that, then what do we do? Where do we go? Like, part of me wants to just focus on the videos that I think are worthwhile. Like I said, the bigger videos, the 45-minute long videos that are curated and tailored, like my setup video. And there's another idea I've got about I probably wouldn't explain benchmarking and marketing positioning, because that's not really something that I think is even going to work on YouTube. So what I'm trying to do now is convert what I'm doing here and what I think is good with stuff that the algorithm and audiences will also like. So I think that, audiences will be able to learn something from a setup tour, and whereas audiences maybe won't be able to learn anything from market positioning and R&D type videos, they will be able to learn something from, like, I've just bought a new PC, what games will will look best on it, which is exactly the same thing but in a different context. So instead of it being R&D creative benchmarking, it would be the best games to play on your new system or your new OLED or whatever. Maybe both of those will be different, because with an OLED screen you want to go for the darker games, Alan Wake 2, Resident Evil, stuff like that will make your OLED shine. And whereas a new system, maybe you want to play Warhammer 40k and see all those Tyranids, or Crimson Desert and those vast vistas. So there's a lot of planning and effort that goes into this. This is no different really than the work I did for magazines with lenses, because, you know, it's pointless just having a lens and going out and using it. You have to go, okay, so what is this lens really going to be used for? What is this good for? And then you have to try and find an environment or situation which will show those lenses off, and that way you get the best article you can. And it's sort of the same with these videos. I think I'm going to approach the videos in a very similar way. But also, on the other hand, I kind of want to do another sprint, so maybe another month of just uploading viciously to try and figure out where things are going wrong so I can fix them. Because when I'm doing one video a week, there's no because I don't, you know, you have to self-edit. You have to be able to look at things yourself and figure out what's right, what's wrong. And I think that this last month I've tried to figure out a lot of problems with infrastructure, and I think it has worked. Like it's just a cable and it's just a mount, but, you know, we've got this now. You know, this wasn't here 2 days ago. I wasn't able to just quickly release my FX30. It was mounted to the desk hard, and we only had 720p from the old cable, so we got 1080 now, and, you know, I can quick release it so that if I wanted to do a video, it's just easier for me to take it off, release it, put it on the tripod, off we go. So there's just stuff like that which happens when you're doing videos constantly. But obviously, like I said, with sort of like the Buddhist New Year and the holidays, like, I'd order stuff and it would take a lot longer than you would think for it to arrive. And also, I was debilitating over my second setup, and I was sort of thinking, what do I do with my second PC? But now that's, you know, it's got an OLED, it's got the LG C5Z, which is kind of like a mid-tier model between the C and the G. So the G models are about 3,000 US, and the C model is about 2,000 US, and the Z model is priced the same as a C model, but the spec is closer to a G. So that's what I ended up going for, and I didn't buy it because it was a Z. It was just coincidentally I got the Z refresh for less than a price of a C, because obviously the G6 is coming out in a couple of months, and they're trying to get rid of old stock of the C, because it's hard to sell something at a luxury price if there's left over. You know, it has to be the only option for it to be able to sell at that price. So I've capitalized on that, and maybe some people will think, well, maybe I'm not at the bleeding edge of tech, but at the same time, I could understand it if I didn't have like a 240 hertz 4K panel right in front of me. So, you know, there's layers to it, right? There's, like, you can benchmark when you have the top, like when you have the 50K sensor, you can go down to a 44K ergonomic, and it becomes contextualized, right? But what I was saying is, like, I also have to sort of stop arguing with people on Reddit. Like, you hear all these stories about indie teams forming on Reddit and finding other like-minded people, and perhaps that was right during the pandemic when people had a lot more spare time. But now I don't think Reddit is really a place that I'm going to be able to do that, unfortunately, and I tend to waste a lot of time, and I seem to think that, you know, if I'm myself, then it will attract other people who are like me. So, you know, when I put a proper comment down or something, then, you know, that will attract other people who feel like me. But the problem is, like, there just isn't people out there that feel like me. And I was watching a YouTube video, which was like, I think it was GQ or something, with Hideo Kojima, like 10 questions with Hideo Kojima or whatever. And it's surprising how very similar we are, in a sense of how we think and how we create is very similar. And in a way, I don't think that's circumstantial. I think that is because I grew up with Hideo Kojima's works. And even though there wasn't really any sort of behind the scenes, he never really explained his workflow, I think that I derived a lot of what I derived from his work. So naturally, we would attack it similarly. Like the way he talks about viewing the world, and certain days he would just spend thinking about ideas and how he will sort of coalesce ideas together, and they would sort of seesaw each other, right? That's sort of very much how I think, and being a photographer, that's very much how I see the world. Like he says, sometimes he takes different streets to work, or walks a different way just to see the same place from a different angle, and that's very much ingrained into what I do with photography, you know. And I think that, you know, in that sense, we're very similar, but what we think is vastly, vastly different. Like he was talking about how everything is constrained into a square, you know, into a rectangle, whether it's an iPad or a monitor or a TV, or like with his newest collab, everything is getting more and more portable. He's always loved portability, right? When you see like how much effort he put into Peace Walker, I think that he's always love the idea of it being portable, and he seems to be fascinated with the idea of VR and holograms, where you're no longer constrained to a frame, you are placed in a world. And for me, like as a photographer, I suppose, like I want to impose that frame onto other people. Like I don't want it to be something, like he says, it's like you have to think about catering to your audience, and I differ in that sense. I think that you know, the whole point of me being in charge is that I imposed my frame. You know, you see things from the way I want you to see it. You know, and I think that this world these days, like everyone is so hung up on biases. They're like everything has to be neutral, and it's like, no, I think that like you should look through someone else's lens, whether you agree or disagree. At least then you have a new viewpoint to make your own decisions from. I'm not asking people to agree with my viewpoint. Their lives are likely radically different to mine, and stuff that, you know, I've come across or things that I live are likely of very little import to the majority of people. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. It doesn't mean that those things that I've seen, you know, they're outlier, but it's the outliers that tell the stories. You know, like what good would a story about a normal person who goes to school and gets average grades and then gets an average job and lives an average life and dies an average death, like that's just not something that people are interested in. People are interested in people who push the boundaries of what is normal, what is okay, what is whatever, you know, like societal norms. And I think that my life is very much that, being brought up in two different countries, you know, my time in the military, my time in motorsport, my time in photography, traveling the world, living life by my own rules. Even now, you know, like living by my own rules, not trying to play the YouTube game to, like I am, but, you know, I'm not allowing the YouTube game to change me, not allowing independent development to spoil my ideas of what a video game should be, not being too heavily influenced by a single source. I think that's the real interpretation of it. I don't think it's not to be influenced. I think everyone is influenced, but I think the problem occurs when people are influenced by a single source. If you can diversify your different sources of inspiration, I think that's where true originality comes from, being able to draw between two things that other people wouldn't see are connected or linked. I think that's kind of my specialty as well. I think that, you know, I can drill real deep into a lot of things, which kind of comes to my other point where, like, doing these playthroughs, and I think that live is what I wanted and live is where it's at, because the first sort of 30% of the game, like in Sand Hill, I had a lot to say about the game, but now there's much less to say about the game, and I think that's because, number one, you know, games sort of do the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and that's not a negative thing. That's, you know, it's like certain songs where, you know, they'll repeat the riff, right? It's not a problem. It's just how they maintain cohesion through the game, and they have to be like that because the player has to have rules and has to expect certain things, right? But then that makes commentary so much more difficult because, like in episode 7, I'm saying the same things as I said in episode 1 and 2, And I don't know, like, if people are jumping in new, I guess that's not really a problem. But for me, I feel like it's sort of moot. So I'm still kind of deciding what I want to do there. But really, I should finish Silent Hill, because I will know once it's done. Right? I can repeat myself in that series, and if I don't like repeating myself, I can decide to do it or not to do it or whatever in the future. But I can't know until I've actually finished it. So I'm definitely going to finish Silent Hill and see how that lands. And this is where I come back to giving maybe another month of viciousness to it, just going in on it and seeing where everything sits. And I might do that, but I also have another idea of sort of stripping it back. Like, I'm really enjoying where my website is going right now, and I feel like the progress that I'm actually making on my games narratively, and also like the foundations that like I'm putting up the scaffolding right now, or not even that. I'm designing the scaffolding right now. I'm designing the crane. I'm not designing the building. I'm designing the crane. You know, I'm designing the thing that will hold the building up. I'm designing the mold. And I feel a lot of enjoyment and a lot of pleasure from that experience, more than perhaps I don't know how to explain it, but like, that's where I'm drawing a lot of pleasure from at the moment, is in designing the mold, is in designing the scaffolding that will eventually, you know, house a monolith. Because like, you can't build a monolith as a one-man band. It's just impossible. And I think that realization is the first step. And I've always realized that. That's why I chose photography, because you can be a one-man band in photography. It's very difficult. A lot of photographers I know are not one-man bands. They have editorial teams, and they have, you know, fixers and translators and all sorts. And some are supported by sort of committees and grants and stuff. So like, even then, I'm sort of the wild card, being the lone wolf in photography, but I enjoy it. And I have collaborated, like, I've collaborated with brands, I've collaborated with magazines, you know, so I have touched on it, but I tend to, you know, focus on my own thing, and being able to design the scaffolding. It takes those strengths and it allows me to be myself. And I think that, like, it's pointless staying away from that. I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. And I think that I'm in a very unique position, because a lot of people, they do, right? Like, a lot of it is concessions, but I'm at a place where I don't need to concede. So I think that, like, and the enjoyment, there's a lot of enjoyment. I enjoy playing games. I enjoy making things. And I think that, you know, like, I need to bring the enjoyment back rather than it being work. I need to be able to be like, this is something I enjoy doing, which is what I've sort of started to do now. So I've started to look at games where I think, like I think to myself, what's the last game that really did the thing that I want to do? And two games really come up for me. First being Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. That's the last game that really did the Sicario thing. Let's put it that way. If anyone's ever seen Sicario, you'll know what I mean. So it did the Sicario thing, right? And I played that. I did initial impressions on the channel, and I think that's fine. I think that's why I'm saying, like, I had a lot to say, and then I just played the rest of the game myself, and I came up with a lot of different feelings and thoughts, but I didn't put them out there. But, you know, like, it sort of changed how I viewed what I wanted to do going forward a little bit, being reminded of that. And then I remembered that one of the other games that was the last to really try this was Rise of the Tomb Raider. So now I'm playing through Rise of the Tomb Raider, and I'm capturing it on OBS as well. And then I started looking into sort of like Remedy, and I've never played Quantum Break, so I wanted to see how Remedy got where they got. So I've started playing Quantum Break, And then also with the announcement of Metro 2039, that got me inspired to start playing Metro again. So I've been playing Metro 2033, but unfortunately I can't capture that on OBS. And the same with Fear Effect. I've been playing Fear Effect and I can't capture that on OBS. So I'm thinking, like, is it worth me getting a capture card so that I can literally just duplicate the screen, capture it on my MacBook? Because I've been obsessed with this. Like I've got a 12400, so an i5, 12th gen i5, and I'm like, I want to build like a B580 Intel Arc sort of silent streaming rig, and I've had this idea, but obviously, you know, motherboards are hard to find, RAM is just stupidly expensive, SSDs are stupidly expensive as well now, so like it's not exactly a wise choice. But I forgot, and this might sound like the most first world problems in the world, but I forgot that my MacBook was a computer, because, you know, my MacBook, I tend to just, you know how people use MacBooks, right? But I forgot that this is actually a capable computer. You know, it's in the M1 version. Like all my Mac stuff, like I got a set of AirPods, but it's the first gen and they're kind of dead now. And that's the problem with being an early adopter, I suppose. But this is a very capable machine. I could stream, I could record off this. Like I could easily do it, no problem. Like I could buy another arm and I could have it up here if I didn't want it. Like if I just wanted it out the way, I could sort of have it up here on an arm, right? I could lift it right up on an arm and just have it out of the way. And have this plugged into sort of like an Elgato. But that's sort of like $250, but like, what I need to think is like, is capturing footage from Fear Effect and Metro 2033 worth $250? And I just don't think it is at this stage, especially after I spent so much recently. I'm trying to calm down and start using the stuff that I've bought, right? You know, I knew this would be a change. I knew that like all my stuff that I had before had to be different, because all of it before was focused on work with a tiny bit of gaming on the side. Like my Xbox controller, I thought, oh, for, you know, $30 I can play some games, you know, or stuff like that, you know. Whereas now, like, I've spent a lot on the gaming experience, and like I just bought these as well, which are the Logitech Pro X headphones, and I'm actually very pleased with this purchase. So that, you know, I can sort of just play games all the time, and not be interfered. Like if Dow's watching TV or whatever out in the other room, I can come in here, you know, and play a game, OBS it, and then that's footage I can use for later. But the only problem with that is at the moment, the games that I'm playing, you know, the newer games, like a whole game recorded, it's about 400, 500 gigabytes. So like I'm talking my 2TB drive will be full up in 4 games. So that's a harsh reality that I'm having to deal with here, and I'm going to have to figure out a workaround for that. But we'll have to see where that goes and how I actually manage to figure it out, because obviously I don't need all of that footage. I just need to clip the cool bits, keep the cool bits, and then the rest can go in the bin. Because, you know, it's not like it can't be recorded again. You know, when I take photographs outside, that day is never going to come again. So all of my photographs I keep. And the same with video, you know, like when I go out, that day will never be the same again. So I keep that video. But with games, I can play that again. And yeah, it might be slightly different, but not, you know, not to the point where it's radically different. So I can just capture it again if needs be. So I think that's what I'll try and do. I'll try and sort of, and that's where the enjoyment part comes. So I start using my free time to enjoy playing the games. And like, but the other thing as well is I sort of captured Resident Evil 9 to do an internal benchmark of, and even though the internal benchmark is coming out great, I feel like I want to replay it as I'm writing about it. So I'm probably going to do that as well. I'm probably going to start playing it as I'm writing. So luckily I managed to have about 5-6 different saves. So I may just go in to the old saves and play those sections and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I did. Yeah, that's how I felt about it. So it's real work. It's it's a lot of it's time consuming. It's a lot of work. I'm not saying it's difficult. It's not difficult in a traditional sense, but it's complex and it's time consuming. To be able to put all this together, and like I said in my other video, the first is always the hardest, but once I got a rhythm, once I got a flow, once I've got a workflow figured out, it should be transposable and I should be able to do this going on and on and on and on. So that's how I feel about my sort of first 2 months in this. I don't regret beginning with research and development. I think that this is what will get my game sold. I've got strengths, as in I have a full portfolio. I don't want to sound egotistical, but I don't think anyone of my generation, certainly not anyone of my age, has the portfolio that I have when it comes to photography. So there's a few videographers out there which could definitely challenge me, but even then, a lot of them are sort of 10 years older than me. But definitely photographers. I don't think there's anyone in the photography industry that has a portfolio that's even close to me in my generation, and definitely not in my age range. So I have that. I have that credentials. What I need to supplement is the other stuff. And I think that R&D does that. I think that, but at the same time, like I said, like I've taken up the mantle of creative director. That's the position I want in my own business. And obviously now I'm doing way more than what a creative director would do. If I get funded, you won't be seeing me on this channel. There will be someone else hosting this, and there will be someone else in charge of the content that we put out. And that's what I want. I would love to hand that over. And there will be teams who will still continue R&D and benchmarking and market positioning, and we will figure out ways of being able to turn that into content for people to watch, because I think that this is interesting. As someone who grew up watching the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings Extended Edition, to me that was everything at the time. So I think that showing the behind the scenes is definitely something that I want to continue doing. But what I'm saying is, there will be teams and people in charge of that, people who know far better than I do about what works in that sense. It's my job to be the creative director and to make sure that, the brand is cohesive across all the things that we want to do, and I think that I need to implement more of that with the channel, maybe, rather than trying to dissect games and show my game knowledge. I think that it's better to show my creative knowledge. So maybe I'll expand out of pure gaming and use gaming as a backdrop. So like I said, if I'm OBSing all the games as I'm researching development, and perhaps doing written word on the research and development, and that's something I can push people to. If you want to see my thoughts on this game, then go over to the website, and then if they're interested, or if they're in the industry themselves, they will get that knowledge from there. And I think that maybe talking about everything else, or trying to do compilations, in a sense that all this stuff kind of ties together, or all this stuff makes me feel a certain way. I think videos like that might be a bit better for showing off what I want to show off in terms of my creative skill set. But also, it's also a taste sort of thing. Like there's a reason. I choose a lot of the different things I choose, and there's a lot of reasonings behind it. And I think that that's something that I sort of want to teach an audience, that there is a deeper meaning to a lot of different things. So I think that, and that's something that me and Hideo Kojima also kind of he's done plenty collabs, like Asus being his most recent one. So I do think there is precedent for what I want to do, large, intimidating precedent. but I'm not easily intimidated. So I think that, you know, I don't want to become an influencer, YouTube influencer, go buy this, go do that. And I don't want to be one of these people which thinks that everything is an open question, because it's not. Like I wanted people to participate in helping me transition from photography into video game development. That was a massive mistake. People don't have a clue. People don't have a clue at all. Like, and I listened to none of it, but that will come through in my next video when I do the setup tour and talk through it all. So I think that, you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm an influencer or guru or whatever, but I think that we're going to stick with, these are my choices. This is, you know, this is my space. As Nurgle said, when it comes to Behemoth, you know, like, this is mine. If you don't like it, stay out. And I think that I'm going to carry on with that mindset. And if that means I have 5 followers, then that means I have 5 followers. But it means that what I'm doing is worthwhile. And if someone actually comes and looks in the future, then they will have something of value there. You know, it's that sort of thing where it's like, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears, does it make a sound? Kind of thing. And, you know, I am going to try and play the YouTube game a little bit so that I can get this a little bit more visible, but I have to be very careful because that is a slippery slope. So there we have it. You're probably not going to hear from me for another sort of 2 weeks, maybe a week if I'm lucky, but maybe there'll be a 2-week hiatus, and then we'll be back on it. I think I'm going to do sort of like, I think I'm going to start working a 4-day week, which may sound like a luxury to a lot, but my days tend to be, you know, from when I wake up to when I go to sleep. So I think I'm going to do a 4-day week. I'm going to do 3 days on YouTube, attacking YouTube, and then 1 day on miscellaneous crap. I've also been putting a lot of time into learning Danish because my mum lives in Denmark. And also, as time goes by, even though I do want to be in Japan, and Japan is my number one goal. I spent a lot of time there. I've lived there over a summer. You know, I have deep ties with Japan, but Japan isn't, you know, easy. Let's put it that way. Denmark isn't easy either. But, you know, I've been learning Danish and thinking about possibilities of Denmark. My mum is based just outside of Aarhus. And the idea is like I'm massively lucky in this because as a person, I have very little. Like, everything I have goes back into my work. Everything I have, you know, like even now, like my major goal is to have enough so that I can do my Nakasendo Way project next year. And I'm not doing it this year because the whole reason why I pivoted from photography into this is because I have quite a few health issues. You know, I haven't lived an easy life. And these past 2 years, I've not been easy on my own body. So I'm hoping that, you know, I can sort of recuperate and then get back into it. But I'm also planning for the fact that maybe I never recuperate. And if I never recuperate, I need to have a job that I can do inside, an office, which is exactly what this is, right? Photography, my photography, like, it's demanding. It's an outside job. I do documentary photography, hard documentary photography, and it involves a lot of time outside. You know, so like I said, I'm lucky because I have options, even though those options are not easy, you know, and this is why, like, my personal view on people, I have very little sympathy. Like, for me to be able to go to Denmark, like, I need a lot to be able to, you know, sort of hit those things that you need for the visas, right? And it's going to take years for me to get there. But it gives me an option in 2 years, you know, if this isn't going well, then I've got Denmark. So I'm spending a lot of time learning Danish, but also circling back. My mum is based just outside of Aarhus, and Aarhus is basically a center for art, especially in Europe. It's one of the largest centers for art. I would say it's probably the largest center for art in sort of the Nordics. Aarhus is like home of that. So I think that there's a future there in what we're doing here if we can't do Japan. So that's sort of like preparing for the worst in a sense. So I will probably, like I said, 3 days on YouTube, 1 day dealer's choice, then 4 days so that's 4 days, and then another 3 days then. So like in Denmark, Saturday is traditionally laundry day, right? And that's where I probably will be. Like, I'll probably end my work week on a Friday. Saturday will then be like laundry day, where we just fix the house. And then Sunday, likely I'm going to spend that with Dao, and we'll go and we'll spend life outside, and just do normal human being things and live life and enjoy my life, because I think that will reflect in the game as much as it will, like, I think that really will reflect in the game if I can enjoy life more. And then Monday then would be dealer's choice, but for myself. So rather than dealer's choice in terms of work, it'll be dealer's choice for myself. If I want to go out and shoot some photographs, low key, nothing sort of like, just enjoy myself, I can do that now that when the weather winds down. Or if I want to just, whatever it is, I think that, that would be, or I might even do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on YouTube, break on Thursday, then Friday be dealer's choice, Saturday laundry day. That might be my breakdown, but I really need to start getting into good habits, and then like spending that hour, 2 hours a day on Danish, regardless of what I'm doing that day. Again, Danish, carrying on with my day. I think that's where I want to go in the future, and likely no one's going to watch this video. Certainly no one's going to get this far into it. But I think that, that's what I want to do. Maybe someone will pull some sort of, maybe you'll learn something from this. Maybe not today, but maybe this will be a point where people will look back to and go, okay, well, actually, at this point in time, he actually made some decent decisions. Or maybe you'll come back and you'll say, fuck me, like, one idiot. Or maybe I'll say that, and then we'll change what we do. But either way, this is what's happening. And as we always say, this is Banshee Interactive. I'm David Roberts. And remember, this is not a simulation.